as we dive into the entrepreneurial journey of Praveen Seshadri, the visionary behind AppSheet and Thunk.AI. Discover how he transitioned from a long tenure at Microsoft to founding successful startups, navigating through multiple pivots, and ultimately being acquired by Google. This episode is packed with insights on innovation, resilience, and the transformative power of AI in business. Welcome to the Startup to Exit podcast, where we will bring you world-class entrepreneurs and VCs to share their hard-earned success stories and secrets. This podcast has been brought to you by TIE Seattle. TIE is a global nonprofit that focuses on fostering entrepreneurship. TIE Seattle offers a range of programs, including the Go Vertical Startup Creation Weekend, TIE Entrepreneur Institute, and the TIE Seattle Angel Network. We encourage you to become a TIE member so you can gain access to these great programs. To become a member, please visit www.seattle.tie.org.
After the success of our Microsoft at 50 series, which is the first-person account of many senior executives in the early years of the company, we're starting our next series, Startup Spotlight. We're going to feature founders and hear their stories, their journeys, and what they are solving in the new world order of AI. I hope you all enjoy it. We have now actually crossed over 25 episodes, and we really thank you for supporting us through our own journey. It's now available everywhere podcasts can be heard: Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Google. I hope you all subscribe, tell your friends to subscribe, and enjoy our next series, From Startup to Spotlight. Thank you. Now, a word from our sponsor. At JP Morgan Private Bank, wealth is understood to be more than just numbers. It's about creating a legacy, achieving dreams, and securing a family's future. With over $3.1 trillion in client assets under management globally, JP Morgan Private Bank is committed to providing customized financial advice that aligns with each client's unique goals. Clients benefit from a personalized approach, working closely with experts in philanthropy, family office management, fiduciary services, and special advisory services. The firm emphasizes building lasting relationships and ensuring that every financial strategy evolves with the needs of clients and their families. JP Morgan Private Bank not only manages wealth, but also helps clients create a meaningful impact. Whether individuals seek to support charitable causes, manage a family legacy, explore new investment opportunities, the private bank team is there to provide guidance every step of the way. With a presence in key financial markets worldwide, JP Morgan Private Bank offers unparalleled access to global insights and opportunities. Its commitment to excellence and innovation ensures that clients receive the highest level of service and expertise. Time is recognized as precious, and JP Morgan Private Bank values every moment spent with its clients. The mission is to make the financial journey as seamless and rewarding as possible, from the initial consultation to the ongoing management of assets. To learn how JP Morgan Private Bank can help clients achieve their goals, visit privatebank.jpmorgan. Connect with a dedicated team of specialists. Again, privatebank.jpmorgan.com. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone. Very pleased to welcome Praveen Seshadri. He's our first installment in our Startup Spotlight series. Praveen is a longtime Microsoftie, then did a startup called AppSheet, which was acquired by Google, and now has a new startup called Thunk.AI. So welcome, Praveen.
Hey, thanks for having me on the show.
Great. So there's a lot of interesting stuff, with the work that you did with AppSheet. So we focus mainly on that. So first, you were at Microsoft for 12 plus years.
12 years, yeah.
Yeah. And, when you started AppSheet, you were middle-aged and with a mortgage and a wife and 2 kids and all that. And what made you decide to do suddenly a startup?
I wouldn't say it was sudden. I had turned 40 And I think you've all been at you've been in Microsoft, others have too. And it was a contentious place. And I realized that I was not a good fit for that corporate life. And so, of course, it paid very well. But there was things I was interested in doing, things to explore, ideas to pursue that were not sure bets. And that's very difficult to do in a corporate environment, I think. You have to have a lot of people aligned behind your ideas and your convictions. It's tough to take a fringe bet. And so I realized if I had stayed in Microsoft, I'd get to 55, have a lot of money in the bank, and be sort of bitter and have experience, with having sharp elbows. Um, Pursuing a startup might lead to a different kind of fulfilling experience, and it sort of turned out that way.
All right, great. So you finally made the decision to take the plunge, and as I understand it, you didn't particularly have a specific idea in mind when you left Microsoft, and then
Yes.
you took a couple of pivots to finally get to AppSheet. So tell us about that journey. I think it'll be very interesting for other startup founders to understand, how do you kind of get to the final startup idea?
I think with the generosity of hindsight, you might say a couple of pivots. In practice, it was at least 5 pivots. And we didn't have the faintest idea, to be honest, what we were doing in terms of running a business. It was two of us who were both we were engineers. We knew each other well, but we'd never run a business. We'd never really thought of what it takes to run a business. So we didn't have any of that sense. We thought we were good product engineers, which also actually is a questionable premise as it turns out. And we had certain ideas about what we wanted to do. At the time, I remember leaving Microsoft and thinking, I want to empower like regular people, non-programmers to be able to program the internet. That was my broad statement is there's all this stuff on the internet. We've got these powerful computers and mobile devices. It should be possible for anybody to describe some way to program these computers to utilize that and organize it and do stuff with it. And honestly, that was such a vague idea that the fact that we ended up with some kind of platform that vaguely resembles that vague idea through many pivots is shocking. But yeah, that was the vague idea, and we didn't know quite what to do with it, how to harness it. It was sort of super broad and ambitious.
Got it. So how long did the series of, how long did it take for you to finally to come up with the idea for AppSheet?
We took 2 years of wandering the wilderness through 5 pivots, working with it, trying to find. We tried to do stuff in the consumer space and shopping. We tried to do something with retail. For about 9 months, were building apps for trade shows. So we just went through so many pivots, and we kept rediscovering that eventually we were trying to build applications for some kind of business purpose. And since we were clearly failing at any business side of this, on the technology side, it seemed like it's not start from scratch every time. There's some platform perhaps here. Let's just fall back to our comfort zone. We're like platform engineers. Let's fall back to something we kind of understand. And so we ended up, I think I left Microsoft in early 2012. It was only early 2014 that we got to this idea of doing AppSheet. And then it took in the October 2014 that we had the first beta release of it.
Got it. So tell us more about AppSheet. What is the
Very
basic
simple
idea around
idea.
AppSheet?
Super simple idea. You can build apps from your spreadsheets. And why spreadsheets? Just because people often had some data that they were structured and put in a spreadsheet. It seemed what we discovered from those 5 pivots, it sounds all like a complete waste of time, but no, what we discovered is there's all of these applications that just look like effectively renderings of structured data and the ability to capture back some structured data through some semantic application. Whether it's a CRM, whether it's some inspection application, whatever it is, they all look like relatively simple database applications. It was super complicated to build mobile apps on Android and iOS with all their weird oddities, offline modes, and so on. So we said, let's platformize all that. Regular people should be able to build these applications. And that was the core concept. And it's still the core concept. It's still a product, part of Google Workspace. The nice thing about it is it's sort of a democratizing concept. There's a lot of people who are not programmers who are able to use that.
Right. So let's say I have a spreadsheet with some customer data in it, and I want my salespeople to update it using the mobile phone. How do I, quote unquote, program it?
So this is what the weird thing is. We discovered a number of things along the way that now have terms that back then did not have terms. We built a no-code application platform. I remember telling people this, you don't need to be a programmer. And they looked at me like, you must be crazy. What are you talking about? People have tried this sort of thing and it's nonsense. It's never going to work, etc. But it took till about 2019 for no code to become a buzzword and everybody wanted to slap that on their existing products. But back in 2015, we were building a no code application platform. The second thing we did was, so that's A, answer is you just walk up to AppSheet and you say, I want to build an mobile application. Here's my spreadsheet, click a button and it would produce the first cut of the application that worked already. You could install it on your phone. And then you could tweak it and change it and add to it and so on. But it had this magic of in the first 2 minutes, you clicked, you pointed a spreadsheet, it deduced the structure, figured out the app, and gave you something you can input, you can output, etc. So the other thing that was interesting is we chose to make this a freemium product. So just self-service, you walk up to, you just sign in, you free Gmail, whatever, and you can use the product for free. Some fraction of those users, if they got above a certain kind of usage, we would say, hey, you need to get to pay with a credit card. This is now called product-led growth, but back then we didn't have.
Yeah. Right.
So we discovered these things purely by accident.
Got it. So how long? So it took you about 9 months to get the product into the
Well,
market.
we've been building stuff for 2 years and pivoting, and every time we didn't start from scratch. So there was some basis of code and
Right.
platform to build applications.
Sure.
And then to do this no code model took us 9 months. We launched, and this is something that most entrepreneurs don't want to hear, I suppose. But your launch of your product is a tree falling in a forest most of the time. And yeah, other than your friends and family, nobody cares. So we launched as a tree falling in a forest. And a week later, we still had no users. And the really weird accident thing happened where we built an add-on into Google Sheets. The Google Sheets has an ecosystem and they had add-ons. And back then, it was quite simple to add one of those things in there, and there were relatively few of them. So we said, oh, we'll do this add-on to Google Sheets so that you can start there, click a button, and build an app. Took me a day to build. There's only two of us, so I happened to build that thing. Took me a day to build. They approved it within a few days. Now it takes many months. And we started to see 10 to 20 people try it every day. That
Wow.
stream became hundreds of people a day. And it's hundreds of people who would try a product. And there were people who actually had some data, were interested enough to say, mobile app for my sheet, let me try it. So that's what got us actually to succeed, is because there were these amazing users who would take a completely broken product, was really broken in various ways. It had some minimal functionality. And instead of completely walking away, some of them would say, can you do this for me? Can you make it work? Because it's broken right now, but I want it to work. And that's what happened is we had a user community of people who were on our case, and we just decided to love them and react to them and build stuff for them. And sat in that loop for 5 years.
Got it. So it was really a product-led growth kind of model to some extent. I mean, you had a freemium model, offered it for free.
Correct.
What percentage of people converted into premium users?
3-4%.
Oh, that's a pretty good number. What I normally tell people is if you get between 3 to 5% converting, that's a pretty good.
Yeah,
Good number.
these were good. These were people who came from a work environment. They were not people who were looking at it. They were people who were using spreadsheets at work. And so I think that was very important. But it's more than I would just say product-led growth. The presumption often product-led growth is that we're product geniuses, whoever is in the startup building stuff. And then it's a means to acquire customers and product-led growth. Here we were actually, it was a customer-led product. That's the truth of it, is that all the features in the product came from people asking for them. We did not have the wisdom, intelligence, knowledge, nothing to know anything about this stuff. Customers came from every industry and actually 120 countries, 120.
Right.
So obviously we didn't know nothing about any of any of their domains. What do I know about running a restaurant in Baghdad? But we had a customer running a restaurant in Baghdad who in the middle of summer wants to build an app. We had customers in Africa, we had customers in Canada and everywhere else in different professions asking for things. So
Right.
So it was quite unique.
So was your sales model primarily B2C, or did you hire salespeople call into enterprises? Because, this would be a great, a lot of applications in the enterprise could be built very easily using AppSheet without, involving IT.
I would say that we did not crack that nut. As in,
Did you try it though?
we tried. I mean, for a
tried it.
while we were purely self-service. I was kind of an idealistic kind of engineer. I said, why do I need salespeople? So I went through that phase where I said, look, people are adopting this product. We're willing to put in a credit card. They're already using the product, and we'll upsell them. So first salespeople we had was really their only focus is upsell the people who are already self-service but paying customers. And that actually was a reasonable model. It grew our revenue, I think it grew our revenue to about 3 million ARR.
Okay, wow.
So I think about half of that was just purely people putting on credit cards. Another half of it was people we then upsold to some little more of an enterprise plan. Still super low priced compared to the big players, but we then I think eventually I think 2019 we raised a Series A. At that point we said, all right, let's go and get a more of a professional sales team with sales leader and SDRs and all of this stuff. Again, though, most of our sales were the people who are already using the product. So we had that good fortune of that, and we were able to sort of double revenue that year. But then we got acquired, and so then it's a whole other story once you're part of the big umbrella like Google Cloud.
Right. So how many users did you ultimately have?
I think at the time we were acquired, we had 8,000 paying accounts.
8,000 paying accounts. Okay.
But most of them small. I mean, one of the principles I had, rightly or wrongly, is more or less I treated the person paying $5 and the person paying 50,000 the same. You're paying customers; they deserve, responsible, professional, accountable treatment from us. And so while I say there's 8,000 of distribution, there's certainly some at the high end of that, some enterprise customers. The customer who paid $10 was still treated with as an important customer.
So let's talk about your funding journey. You went through, you raised some initial funding for your company, friends and family, etc., and then seed round and Series A. So take us through that. You've written about it.
I've written
Take us
about
through.
it.
What are some of the lessons you learned from that?
I would say if anybody listens to this, I suck at raising money, so I'm not a good person to take advice from. Except you can take solace from the fact that you can suck at raising money and still survive. That would say the high level takeaway. My general principles are forget about everybody else, because you hear about everybody else raising large sums of money and you think, oh my God, well, everybody's raising this much and that much at this valuation. It doesn't matter. You got a business to run. And so the question is, what money do you need for your business to succeed? My principle was always, perhaps by circumstance, what's the least money you need to succeed? Perhaps if somebody had written me like, I don't know, SoftBank and decided to write me some huge check at the start, I'd be a different person. But nobody wrote us a check at the start. Nobody's prepared to. And so we learned to just basically be super frugal. I remember eventually we got acquired, one of our VCs. Eventually we raised a Series A, and one of our VCs, Greg Papadopoulos, who's at NEA, told me, Greg's a great guy. He said, Praveen, you should be really proud. You've been so frugal and spending money, and you've done this with, he called it sipping capital. That is, you just had enough to sip at it. Couldn't take a swig of the capital. You sip at it.
But could you have? I wonder though if that was the right strategy. Maybe if you had invested in a business partner, a sales strategy, enterprise sales strategy, it would have been much bigger. Ultimately, you may have been still bought by Google, but it would have been a different price.
You're totally right. I don't claim this. Actually, this is why I started by saying I started raising money and so on. I do feel that business was undercapitalized, underinvested in, and therefore it limited its growth. If you have the ability, at the points at which the product is ready and can grow, it needs to have that fuel to feed it. But at the points where the product is not ready, you only need a fuel to build the product. And judging that is super difficult. I'm not a fan of having large teams or until you need a small core team to build the core product. It's not expensive. It's expensive for those folks, but they take equity. And so you do not want to sell equity to investors at low valuations when you're building the initial product. It's a very poor use of money. But you do want to raise money, adequate money for growth. And exactly what that ratio is, tough to tell. We managed eventually to raise money for growth. It helped us grow, but it probably was too late in the cycle. In hindsight, it would be better to have raised it earlier.
How much Series A did you raise?
We raised a 15 million series.
15 million?
15, 1-5.
That's a substantial amount of money.
Yeah. Before that, we had raised about 3.5 million on safe notes. And with that, we had run 6 years.
That's a lot, yeah.
But we were generating 3 million in ARR at the end of that period. So we basically were break even with about a 15-person team. By the time we raised a Series A, once we raised that money, then we were like, okay, hey, then the team grew to 45 people. We doubled our revenue in a year. And then we got acquired. So it puts you on a different trajectory.
All right, let me turn it over to Gabri to continue the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One
So,
one point
Praveen,
here, to close on the thing, super important. Not what money you got, but who you get it from. And so I'd say that's a whole other dimension to the people invest in your company. Are It's kind of like being in a long-term relationship. And so it has to be people aligned on values and aligned on your goals and uh incented to do, who believe in doing the right thing as defined in various tricky situations. Very important to have the right people. Sorry, Gauri, go ahead.
no. Praveen, that's actually quite good because when Shirish and I talk to founders today, we advise them that early capital is good, but it's also you got to think in 7-year increments, not 2, 3. I mean, I said that's 7 to 10 years is a long relationship in terms of a professional one, right?
Yeah,
And this is one of those you take home and bring back. It's not like you can switch off at 5 o'clock and go back, right?
correct. There's also the subtleties which I was not at all familiar with, but I have this now a principle. You take a big check from a big fund and you take a small check from a small fund. You never take a small check from a big fund, even if offered to you.
Hmm.
And this is not at all obvious to a first-time entrepreneur. First-time entrepreneur is like, oh, let's pick up a favorite big firm. I don't know, Sequoia, Axel. Somebody says, I'll give you a small check. You may feel, wow, this famous fund wants to give me a small check. Super bad idea for various reasons. That's, I think, important principle. If you're raising a small amount of money, go to angel investors and the smallest funds. Um, yeah, anyway.
That's very good advice. That's very good. So let's switch to your current startup, right? So now you have a track record of starting one, pivoting into into a success, and getting acquired by Google. So this go around, after your stint at Google, did you land on the idea directly? What is it that you're doing, and did you land it right away?
Well, what we're doing first, the company is called Thunk.AI. It's like Think, but it's thought already. So it's Thunk.AI. And we're focused on utilizing the modern Gen AI to improve business productivity. Basically, we learned a bunch about business productivity by doing AppSheet. Along comes this huge transformative wave of AI. And obviously, it has various consumer applications. And the question we asked was, can it be used to automate work? So a little more than 2 years ago, I quit Google. One of my co-founders, Tony, who had been at AppSheet, also quit Google. Our third co-founder quit her job at Facebook. And we said, well, let's try to apply the Gen AI technology to help people automate work and drive business productivity. Now, fashionably, this would be called AI agent automation. When we started, didn't have the term. People were like, what are you trying to do? Anyway, so we were also trying to figure out what we're trying to do. And so it's been a sort of a very interesting 2.5 years. I'd say the core idea has been consistent. The technology has changed a lot in the last 2.5 years. And so it is a space where there's a lot of anticipation and judgment that's needed, far more than anything else that I've kind of lived through and seen, because there's a lot of unknowns and there's a lot of the pace of technical change is very fast. But that's a broad space we're in. And we've been doing it for a little more than 2 years. I mean, we've built a good
That's cool.
platform. It's sort of, in some sense, in spirit, it's similar to AppSheet in spirit. It's a no-code platform to describe workflow applications that you want AI to run, and AI runs them and runs them reliably.
So are you selling this time to enterprises or to uh, smaller businesses?
One of the some of the hubris that comes, you mentioned, hey, you had a success before, and all these startup journeys are these fluctuations between hubris, reality, and maybe some hubris again. Okay, so I would treat my AppSheet journey as left at Microsoft, hubris, think you're great, turns out you suck at everything, and then you sort of dig your way out of that, say, hey, start doing something useful for people, and so on. So likewise, I think we sort of left Google to start this thing. And startup, you have to start with some hubris. And so the hubris here is, hey, we want to do something transformative. What we really want to do is actually, AI should make it possible to truly deliver 1 billion people being able to build things that can productively run. And they don't need to be able to specify it at some incredible granular detail, but AI should fill in all the gaps into that work. So that's our starting hubris-filled thesis, if you wish. And so our eyes are wide, and appetite is high. So that's sort of where we're coming from. So to your question, enterprise or not, the fact of the matter is, in the moment, there's tremendous amount of noise around AI and AI agents. There's a lot of confusion around it. There's a massive opportunity for SMB and there's a massive opportunity for enterprise. And the question really is, are you building a platform that's only for one or the other or both? We committed this time, we're going to build a platform for both. We built this platform so it can be installed on premise, a bunch of containers in an isolated instance if an enterprise wants it. But there's also multi-tenant thing in the cloud. It can be self-service. So we've intentionally built for both. Now, who's going to adopt it first is an open question. A year ago, it sure seemed like enterprise are going to adopt it first because in all the enterprise companies, from the board down, there's a mandate. Thou shalt use AI. It's clearly is this transformative wave. Why? What are we doing with AI? Is a question driven from the board down to the CIO. Whereas in the small and medium business, any of these things is bottom up. It's not, there's no board driving this. It's really about, is there practical value that can give us an edge, it can be, and so on. And so when there's confusion about what AI can do and a lot of hype and so on, SMB is typically not at the forefront of that. So I would say in the last 12 months, the enterprise customers have been the ones who have already got the mandate to say we should be looking at AI agents. So we've focused a little bit more on the enterprise customer in the last 12 months, just to work with design partners, work closely with a few to hone the platform. But it's an interesting moment in time because a lot of the hype is now being also tempered with, oh, is it overhyped? Because there's now this large number of voices calling out some obvious known technical things, which is, but is this AI reliable? How can we actually put any of this stuff into production when it's all makes for good demos? So a lot of the enterprise companies seem to have slowed down and in terms of they're running to the reality checks. Whereas I think SMBs had 12 months to sort of get used to the idea that you can automate things with AI. And so there's opportunity on both sides. And we'll go wherever there's a pull, really, be honest.
Right, right. So one of the theses I have, and I want to sort of dig into how your company is going to solve it. SMBs really did not have as much productivity tools like enterprises did. Right, enterprise along the way. I mean, your previous company was a productivity tool that was available first time for the SMB, but there was lots of other productivity tools available for the enterprise all along. There was a whole bunch of consultants who were automating. It was coming along, right? Now AI seems like it's democratizing tools for all. I mean, the fact that I could imagine writing poetry, it's in itself is the first sign that AI is democratizing that. So is the opportunity that what you're building, the AI agent tool set for SMB, a real one that they could adopt faster than in AppSheet, they were discovery. Hey, I don't know how to build a you know, an app for a mobile device, and this allows me to do it. Now, are you bringing it to that point where like, hey, I could do it because enterprises have all the help they have. They have Google, Microsoft, Salesforce, everybody calling on them to say, I'll help you with AI agents. I don't think they're calling SM.
This is true. To sort of unpack your question or different aspects of it, yes, we're building the product we have is something that an SMB customer with relatively little help can pick up and create AI automations with. So that's A. And that's definitely the intention. There's a separate question of whether or not enterprise customers are well served by the product offerings of the legacy vendors. To me, it feels like having worked at Microsoft, worked at Google, they're all great companies. But the real question is their suite of products really what you would build in an AI first world? I mean, that we all are forced to use a set of products around office productivity that look effectively like Microsoft Office from the 90s. They just happen to be loaded through a browser, but I got all my email in one place. I got my file system in one place. I got my slides here. I got my sheets there. That's a sort of a strange way to organize your information if AI was going to look at it. It just happened to be the way stuff was organized in the early 90s. But you see, the legacy vendors have basically have made their businesses around building siloed products. And whether it's Salesforce or whether it's Microsoft or whoever else who is now saying, hey, I'll give you AI, there is this question of I fundamentally set up all these enterprise customers to have a broken and inefficient system that no amount of icing on that broken system, AI icing is not going to solve for. So at some point, I do strongly believe at some point, this AI wave is going to break these product silos because the AI logic has to work across the product silos to do intelligent things in some particular domain. If I'm working with customers, I got some information in my CRM and some is sitting in my email and some is sitting in my file system. And I got to tie those things together to do anything meaningful. We as humans tie together in our brains. None of the vendors traditionally have built their systems this way. So there's an opportunity, but it is a long shot. So we have to acknowledge that. And it comes back to when you do a startup, do you pursue the long shot opportunities also? And those are the ones that get you big wins.
Right, right. So you mentioned when you started AppSheet, hey, you're great engineers, but really didn't know how to run a business. You ran one, you successfully exited it, worked in a big corporation that might have shown you how to run or how not to run, but whatever you learned out of it, you came out. This go around, if an entrepreneur listening to you, if you could address 3 or 4 areas, right? How do you know you've achieved, say, product market fit? You have a go-to-market plan, your pricing is reflective of the value you're giving, and all the other business stuff that still needs to be done. I mean, it's not going to go away. You still have to kind of do the business stuff of all this. So in round 2, now that you're a serial entrepreneur, how are you, how would you advise on these threads to a first time? Take back to Praveen of 2012 who said, I'm going to start a company. What would you be telling Praveen of 2012?
Let me say this. Very few people can fundamentally change and generate new strengths they didn't have when they were, by the time you're 40 or whatever, and I'm 55. So I'm unlikely to have become a genius at business, and I'm not. So it's useful to have a group of co-founders or executives who balance out the needs of the company. I would say that's a really important thing. And each person, as your founder, focus on your strengths. I think that's my main thought in this. That's one meta thought. I'm fundamentally product and engineer, and I like to look at the world through that lens. And it's therefore useful to pursue a business which aligns at least with the majority of the founders in terms of how they view the world. Because we view the world the product first lens, we believe that if we build a good product, yes, we know there are successful businesses built with mediocre products, but we have no shot at running such a business. Our only shot is if we build a good product, and maybe we can run it as mediocre business people, but the product has to be great. And so I think that's our first observation of about ourselves. We really believe that the product must be compelling, and that's A. B, I developed a very, very, very strong value system around prioritizing customers. And I think that's a long-term value system, principle rather than doesn't translate necessarily into short-term revenue and so on. But I think, so at least the way we're thinking about this is build the best product you can build, keep refining it, have a maniacal focus on your customers and making sure you value them, respect them, make them happy. And the business part of this will be reasonably straightforward if you built a compelling product for a real need. If it turns out you have to do special business things, have true business, unique insights, and so on, I certainly don't have them. And so that can't be part of my strategy. Hopefully, we will have other people in the team who will be able to squeeze the most out of the business choices and the business strategy and so on. But I don't plan on it. I plan on build a great product, do put in front of customers and deliver most of the value to them. In other words, I tell our customers, you mentioned pricing. Right now, AI pricing, big open topic. So customers who work with us, we'll do a free proof of concept. And we'll say, okay, it's time to get a contract. They say, tell me about your pricing. And I say a very simple thing. Here's the principle behind our pricing. You should be generating value. There should be value being generated by doing AI automation on this. Most of that value should accrue to you. Fraction of that should accrue to us. 80% should accrue to you, 20% should accrue to us. That's the principle through which, the lens through which we approach it, right? We have to then translate that into something practical. So as a practical thing, we might say, initially, I know you're only doing these 3 projects, you're not doing more, whatever. So here's what we propose as a platform price. Is that good for year 1? We will figure this out together. Now, you may look at this and say, this is insane. This doesn't sound like a business person at all. But you notice it's very much aligned with a person who basically says, I'm valuing my customer. And I want this to be a customer-driven product. And so that's the sort of approach we have on this at the moment. And maybe it's uninformed or maybe it is just idealistic, but that's the way we're proceeding.
So in your current, that is actually good advice, by the way, because the discovery of what you're talking about with your customer, I think is extremely important when the underlying technology is shifting at a pace that is not seen by most of humanity in general. Because
Correct.
in many cases, the underlying technology was solid, then you might have innovated. Like Uber was an innovation on location, but location was well known. Declaration of location was well known way before Uber came along. But this is very different, right? So I like that advice you gave to our audience.
Yeah. I also say, I can say this as a small business, sort of, I would say, startup kind of person. You never want to be in a situation where your customers feel that you're overpriced. In fact,
Yeah.
I feel the software industry in general is making a big mistake. Say this having talked to enough, especially how enterprise customers are super fleeced, to be honest. They're charged products at ridiculous prices and sometimes get locked into them. There's countless number of customers, enterprise customers, who get into their software vendor sues them. It's sort of ridiculous. Forces them to do upgrades and charges them back fees. And people, there's sort of this almost this mentality of, if you get into the enterprise market, then you get to generate lots of revenue because you can overprice these customers.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually would much rather be in the situation where the customer basically says, you're giving me a very fair price.
Mm-hmm.
The principle always used to be, but any customer ever basically said, I'm happy with the product, we basically say, we'll refund you your entire money.
Mm-hmm.
Entire money.
Right.
There's almost no service that does this, right? If I sign up for a service and I'm not happy with it, I paid my month, I paid my year, it's never coming back.
Yeah.
But that's such a bad approach for a startup to have. Startup really has got to think about the next decade of where these customers respect you, even if they walked away, do they respect you?
Right. 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 Um, so based on your previous experience, was your go-to-market different this time around or similar? I mean, you had this sort of attachment into Google Sheets that
Yes.
propelled it. Was that something you could do here?
We could try. We've tried. I don't think that's going to work in this case at the moment. The point is, there's just a lot of factors that have to align. When we did AppSheet, the iPhone had been out for 6 years at that point in time. Everybody knew what a mobile app was. Everybody could imagine what features they wanted. They just couldn't build it. It was a relatively simple problem. So there was no problem describing the value prop of having the result. The biggest problem everybody's having around AI today is beyond ChatGPT. Nobody's able to basically say, damn it, I want this AI thing. They can say, I could speculate that maybe this would be cool. Everybody has this problem, whether it's Microsoft, Google, whoever is selling AI products right now has this problem of people like, okay, that looks nice, but do I really want it? Is it really fundamentally going to change the game? Nobody, so there's that unknown. Yet at the same time, you got this ridiculous amount of oversaturation of the market in terms of the hype, the marketing. We don't have to educate anybody on why AI in terms of what is AI. In fact, everybody has a different notion of what is AI, partially right and partially whatever. But so tremendous amount of pre-marketing, but not a whole lot of value proposition that's sunk into the customer. So it's not as simple as put your product out into the stream and the fish will bite. One, we have to go through this discovery process of working closely with a small number of customers to build a product that really matters to them. And that's kind of been the approach for us is we work with about 10 customers, we work super closely with them, we meet with them every week, engage with them super closely, and make sure the product works for them. And that turns out to be super non-trivial just because of where AI technology is today. And the non-trivial part, by the way, it's not that you can't invoke a language model and get results and so on, but making it work reliably is a difficult thing. And in fact, all the AI agent products from vendors, there's various benchmarks and things. They say like 30% reliable, 60% reliable. We have vendors telling customers, just get used to it. You're not going to get more than 70% reliable, but just find applications where that's okay. And then you ask yourself, why wouldn't the customers be a little reticent to go with that? So we're sort of focused on how do we make this an automated process 98% plus reliable, which should be at least as good as or better than human reliability on some of these tedious processes. That turns out to be super technically deep problem. So it feeds on desire to build a technically deep product. And so that's where we're at.
Got it. So let me sort of go down this path a little bit with you on. You said have good co-founders because you have your strengths, right? The others could bring other strengths, so complementing. Where do you stand on mentors and advisors, and who would you pick if the world was the oyster? Who would you pick and say, I want this person in my corner? Not because they want to be or you want them, just as a metaphorically speaking.
So there's two separate things, I think. One is, who would benefit the company by them opening doors for the company, getting introductions and so on. That's less about personal mentorship. It's just more about, I'd say somebody who's, run a big successful enterprise before, if they were sitting on our board and felt incented to basically give us introductions and tell other people how great we were, of course it would benefit us. So I would just say, feels like a very transactional kind of response to your question. I think your question has been more about who can provide mentorship and guidance to founders as people and go
Exactly.
through the founding journey and so on. And there, it's actually weirdly people who you must respect already, and they must know you already, because you don't have the bandwidth in this process to get to know the person very deeply. So if it's a good example, somebody who you worked with closely before, maybe you was a manager, mentor, something before. So they say, hey, I already know you, Praveen. I know your strengths and weaknesses. And so I can advise, and I'm fond of you. So I can advise you in a way that you don't take offense when I have to push on something. You, you can have people who you seek their counsel. And there's a lot of people giving you free advice in this world, and generously. That's a beautiful thing about startup ecosystem. People are super generous, well-intentioned and generous. So you don't need to have them as mentors. But almost nobody's incented to tell you, Praveen, you're screwing up. Nobody's incented to do this. So if there's somebody who you trust enough and they have a strong enough relationship with you, they know it's not going to be broken by them saying this to you. That is valuable. So in AppSheet, we had, at some point when we raised my VC money, we had a board. So we had two of us as founders on the board. We had two VCs, and then there was a neutral board member. And the neutral board member was Peter Spiro, he had a long time ago been my manager at Microsoft. And he was a technical fellow, retired, whatever. So he'd been retired for a long time. And so he's my friend. But Spiro was able to tell me things like, Praveen, you're falling into that trap I've seen you fall into before, where you get, super focused on this one thing and you lose sight of this. Or, you sure about this? So, and I was prepared to hear it from him also. And so that sort of mentorship, I think, is very valuable in whichever dimension. It could be purely about just, handling stresses and things, or it could be about something more specific like business or technical or whatever. And it's tough to find. There's relatively few for any of us. There's relatively few people in the world we have those relationships with. And if you're fortunate enough that they're willing to spend time on engaging with your startup to mentor you on this, then you're very fortunate.
So, just as a last, as we wrap this up, would you see this go around compared to the first one? I mean, and there was seemingly a 10-year gap, 2012 and around 2022, when you decided to jump on. So there's certainly an age gap and difference and all that. But now that you've done this the second go around, was it different this time, or were you very clear and sure? Because again, you had this crossroads. You could have stayed in Google, big bank account, like you said, and maybe miserable, maybe less miserable. I don't know, but you made a very intentional decision to come back in.
I'll say this.
Why?
First, why? I'm 55, so we made this decision at 53. The decisions you make at 40, you have more runway than the decisions you make at 55. Really, you have less. There's less at stake. When I started the previous company, I had my kids were in middle school, and my wife went to medical school. I did a startup, and neither of us took a salary for 5 years. So it's a sort of it's a bigger, riskier decision. This one's more a decision of what you do with your life, because you you're fortunate to be healthy and able to do this. And the question becomes, if you're going to commit 10 years of your life to work on something, is it useful? And I had to, and so I think it was worth it. It did occur, it felt to me that this wave of AI was the single most exciting thing and transformative thing I've ever seen. And has happened in computation since the first computer. So I was born in 1970. First computers came out before that. And since 1970, there's not been a technical breakthrough of this potential for change and proceeding at this pace. So what the hell? Why did I go get a computer science degree, PhD, teach, work on all this stuff for 20 something years? Work on all this stuff, and then at this moment say, nah, sorry, I'm just going to spend my time retired. I like working. I like working my 80 hours a week. That's what I do. I write code every night. I write code every day. And so this is my retirement is you're swinging for the fences for this. It's great. So to me, it's like it'd be crazy not to pursue this moment. So that's sort of simple. It became a very, very simple decision to jump in. Once you jump in, then of course it becomes like, hey, there's a lot. It's not just about you individually. It's about the team collectively. It's about the investors. All of those things. But that personal decision, super, super simple and stress free. Because what's your opportunity cost at this age is low, except for clock ticking. Biological clock is ticking, so that opportunity cost is super high. But other than that, it's not a yeah. So I would say emotionally, it's much easier.
So, do you have investors now on this one already?
Yeah, we
Or is
raised.
it all self-funded?
We self-funded initially, and then we raised a safe note. So we just made sure, like I say, we made sure I just followed the same principles I wrote, which is raised smallish amount of money from small investors and enough to make sure we can build a product. And we're pretty much there. We still have quite a bit of money in the bank. So we should be able to get to demonstrating product market fit this year and then go raise money to go scale it.
But since you have already executed an exit, right, from AppSheet, right, the path for investors to trust you is different now because you came from Microsoft to a AppSheet, but now you've exited. Yeah, you had a pitch shop in Google, but everybody knows you can sell into Google, right? So has that changed investors' interaction with you? Are people saying, "Hey, I
Yes.
want to in on it. I don't know. I don't care what you're building."
Nobody said that to me, so not quite there. But your question of has it changed the investor approach? Yes. As in the way I describe it to some people is earlier it was super difficult to even get the conversation. Now it's not difficult to get the conversation. It doesn't mean that it's easy to get the check, but so progress. It's just that what I went back to, our ambitions are bigger. So I think there's that also. So there isn't the room for here to do a slow burn for 6, 7 years. There's not that's not realistic. So you have to work faster, raise more money earlier. So that trajectory is different. And also doesn't change the fact that at the end of the day I suck at raising money. So there's that too. That has not changed. So yeah. The big difference is the first time around I spent a lot of time chasing money, thinking that was a demonstration of success, of progress. Here I spend no time chasing money. None.
That's a good thing.
When it looks like we should be able to raise money, we'll try to raise money. But right now, we have to focus on the product and the customer. And until then, zero distraction, talking to VCs, talking to whatever, is just not an issue. And that's the luxury we have right now. And so it's super wonderful. It's not a confidence we could have had unless I'd gone through that once before.
Right. Praveen, thanks. That was like a master class on do's and don'ts of a startup, right? You can be an engineer and have a successful exit. That's your first thing. You
There's
keep saying you
there's
suck at
many
it. I don't know. You exited.
There's many don'ts, by the way. So, but we didn't cover all that would be a whole 1 hour of all the screw ups that we did and we shouldn't do. But yeah, but very few of them are terminal. Just keep at it. That sort of maybe mentality is just one foot in front of the other, and keep at it. Sometimes
We'll bring
sometimes
you back.
unfortunately,
We'll bring you back for the part 2. So, Shirish, back to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Praveen. Great conversation. And I will also link to your Medium posts. Quite illuminatory. Thanks for sharing all your wisdom with the startup community and wish you all the best with Thunk.AI.
Absolutely. Thank you both for the opportunity to talk. It's great, and I look forward to seeing the rest of the series also.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to our podcast from Startup to Exit, brought to you by TI Seattle. Assisting in production today are Isha Jain and Mini Verma. Please subscribe to our podcast and rate our podcast wherever you listen to them. Hope you enjoyed it.